Welcome to Write On Audio. We hope you enjoy this feature presentation. All Write On Audio presentations are protected by copyright and are the exclusive property of Write On e-Publishing LLC. If you enjoy this presentation, please like, share, and subscribe to receive notifications of all our latest content. This presentation is intended for mature audiences. Discretion is advised. Now please enjoy this Write On Audio feature presentation.
Write On Audio presents Greaves, a Write On Press feature. The infinitely talented Alistair Farley grew up in a military family during the inception of Greave-Ball as a sport, the documentary narrator said. Of all the things people have called me, the only one I truly hate is talented. People who don't understand think it's the Cadillac of compliments for an athlete. Innate ability. Like I was destined to be great at what I do. Like I beat out those other schlubs who wasted their lives grinding away practicing just because I was lucky. Ding, 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 big winner at the DNA casino. Bullshit. I sacrificed and grinded just as much as those schlubs. You know what they say when the young hotshot burns out? When there are no goals scored in a season or they got knocked out every other round, they say, but they were so talented. So what is it? For me, it's destiny. But for that schlub, it's wasted potential? Makes no sense. The sound of the holoscreen blared throughout the living room. Alistair sat on the couch with his son, Francis, in a living room that was the size of most houses. The curtains flowed over the opened sliding doors that led to the balcony. It overlooked the sprawl of Los Angeles. The holoscreen played a mini-documentary meant to generate hype for Alistair's championship rematch against the Lithuanian national team. He hoped it would be his final game. Pictures of a young Alistair faded in and out on the screen. His father, Francis Farley, was in military research and development and one of the creators of combat greaves, boots that are now a standard piece of international military equipment. The boots allow their wearer to attach, slide, and glide over any surface. During their testing phase, the sport of Greave-Ball was created. Alistair grew up wearing Greave-boots. Where most kids learn to bike or skate, Alistair was an early adopter to Greave-boots and mastered Greave movement at the age of 12 years old. The documentary cut to footage of a young Alistair jumping between buildings, sliding along their walls as he landed perpendicular to the ground. When he reached the end of the wall, he backflipped off the wall, stuck the landing back on the ground, and smiled at the camera. With the help of private investment, the International Greave-Ball League was formed. The game combined the most exciting elements of mixed martial arts, soccer, and hockey. Each team is comprised of 7 players and played in a repurposed hockey ring. The objective of the game was simple: get the puck into the opponent's goal. The team who scored the goal wins the round, first to win 2 rounds out of 3 wins. Francis looked up at Alistair. Why did they call it Greave-Ball? You don't use a ball, Francis asked. Do you play football with your feet? Alistair replied. Everywhere but in the US they do. Fair enough. I don't know, probably marketing reasons. The camera cut to a Greave-Ball goal. It looked like a small box cut out of the wall. It was small enough that a normal-sized person could obscure it by standing in front of it. However, getting the puck into the goal is no small task. Greave-Ball operates differently than other traditional team sports like soccer, lacrosse, or hockey. The most common way a goal is scored in Greave-Ball is by knocking out the keeper. The documentary cut to keepers being beaten to a pulp, keepers being thrown to the other side of the stadium, keepers being kicked into the goal after making a save. Really? They're still using that clip of Phillips? Poor bastard. They love that clip. The man was the best keeper of his era, and he got kicked in once, and now it's all people remember him by. In Greave-Ball, once you're ruled knocked out by a referee, you are out for the remainder of the match and can only be replaced by an alternate at the beginning of the next round. But what keeps the keeper from being attacked? The documentary cut to a diagram of a Greave-Ball arena. The keeper is defended by players named enforcers. The enforcers ensure the keeper's safety by defending them from attacks by the opponent's wingers and forward. The wingers focus mostly on defeating the enforcers while the forward battles the keeper one-on-one with the puck and their body. And finally, there's the heavy. The heavy is the center of the Greave-Ball match. They are usually the physically strongest player and the most adept at hand-to-hand combat. The match begins with the puck being placed between them in a face-off. They try to get the puck to their team and after focus mostly on knocking each other out. If one heavy knocks their opposing heavy out, their team has a massive advantage for the round as the goalie must now face both the forward and the heavy, providing that the wingers haven't eliminated the enforcers. The holoscreen showed clips of men and women mercilessly beating each other in a Greave-Ball arena. But where others saw a game of barbarism and brutality, Farley saw an opportunity for beauty. The documentary played a clip of a 20-something Alistair sliding along a wall with the puck. He reached out his right arm, and a grappling hook shot out and attached to the keeper. The line snapped taut as it retracted, and Alistair used the momentum to fly toward the keeper. The keeper, a massive man, stumbled forward a few feet as Alistair flew towards the goal. The keeper turned back to defend the goal as Alistair approached from above. At the last minute, Alistair unhooked from the keeper and shot a new hook from his left arm at the wall directly above the goal. Alistair attached to the wall above the goal and slammed the puck in from above. Farley became the father of the modern forward strategy. His weapon was not strength or force, but speed and cunning. Francis looked at his father again. "You could have fought like the other forwards. Why didn't you? You're stronger than most of them and could easily get more knockouts," Francis asked. Alistair, eyes still fixed to the screen, took a moment to understand how to explain it best. "The goal of the game isn't to hurt people. It's to get a puck and a goal. The fighting just sells tickets," Alistair said. "That, and you need to sleep at night," Alistair thought to himself. They went back to watching the documentary. For the past 20 years, Farley has been one of, if not the greatest Greave-Ball player of all time. He announced he would retire at the beginning of last year's season. He shocked fans and press alike when he announced he would be returning to the Los Angeles Waves after losing the international championship match to the Lithuanian national team at the end of the season. During the match, he sustained multiple near-fatal injuries at the hands of Lithuania's international all-star heavy, Lina. As the documentary cut to an image of Alistair's leg being broken by a strong, dark-haired woman, Alistair turned the holoscreen off. He sat in silence with his son for a few moments. "How did she beat you?" "What do you mean?" "Your whole life you've never had a problem dealing with heavies, but she's fast, like me. I've never experienced a fast heavy. It seems to go against all theory around Greave-Ball strategy, but they've built the team around her speed. She also, yes, she'd kill to win." There was an unwritten code of honor amongst Greave-Ball players that was only truly understood by the players and their families. In a situation where a player is facing grave bodily harm at the hands of another, the attacker will allow them to concede. Like tapping out in the 21st century's mixed martial arts sports, Greave-Ball's concession system allowed a player to say, "I yield," which would count as a total knockout, disqualifying them from competing in the rest of the match. A drastic measure reserved only in the face of career-impairing or ending injuries. Lina Balkas, the Lithuanian heavy, never extended such a courtesy. Alistair had 2 leg braces to prove it. "But you'll beat her this time," Francis said. Alistair smiled at his son. "They're a one-trick team if you—" "I know, we've prepared," Alistair said. The public perception was that Alistair came back to reclaim his throne, to prove he was still the greatest and retire. However, Alistair had truly returned for one reason: to break Lina Balkas. Not for vengeance, not for himself, but for the game he had dedicated his life to. He needed to set an example for those who would follow in her footsteps. Winning at the cost of ending careers was unacceptable and would destroy the game he built. He knew he was the only one who could end her terror. A few hours later, Alistair packed for the championship rematch journey against the Lithuanian national team. The bedroom he shared with his wife, Grace, was modest despite its size. A king bed across from the holoscreen, 2 nightstands, and a hassock at the foot of the bed. Alistair had not slept in this room with his wife for a year. Grace entered the bedroom and walked past Alistair without a word. She sat at her vanity next to the bathroom and put on her makeup. She was an attorney, Alistair's attorney. Alistair's manager had hired her firm to represent him during the early formation of the league. At their first legal team meeting, Alistair was stricken not only by her beauty and the way everyone deferred to her for difficult questions, but she was funny. She made what should have been a meeting Alistair would ignore fun. Alistair would text her legal questions that she knew he could have asked his manager. She found it charming. He was charming back then. They met to discuss a contract over coffee, but only ended up discussing how much they both hated the phrase, "if you wouldn't mind." They married 5 years later, and Francis was born 5 years after that. Alistair looked up from his packing and said, "Hey, I thought we could all go to your mother's place for a while when I get back." "If you get back," Grace said, concentrating on applying foundation. Alistair sighed, exasperated. "Sometimes I really think you don't want me to," he said. Grace laughed. "Yes, wouldn't that be so nice for our son and me? Widow and son of the legendary man who died heroically trying to put a piece of metal in a box," Grace said. "You know it's bigger than that. People's livelihoods are at—" "Oh yes, right, not about you. Sorry, let me rephrase. Widow and son of the martyr who died heroically for the sins of those trying to put a piece of metal in a box. I don't want to have this fight again. There's nothing to be said, Al. You've made it clear where your priorities lie. I just hope you understand what they cost," she finished, and left the room. The flight was silent. Coughs and pleasantries were the only sounds that filled the private airliner. The stakes were too high to lose focus on small talk. They arrived at Le Parc des Princes in Paris around noon. The football pitch was already fully converted into a Greave-Ball arena by the time they arrived. The day was filled with mostly warm-up exercises, getting used to the way the Greaves felt on the walls, defensive and offensive puck-throwing drills. They would save their energy for the following day. They looked ready. At night they reviewed strategy and game footage of the Lithuanian team. Most of the conversation revolved around avoiding Lena. They planned to avoid contact with her for most of the match, tire her out. And in the final round, they would execute a full-team heavy takedown. Every player except Alistair and their keeper, Wallendam, would target Lena. Alistair was supposed to buy time during the assault, glide around the walls until Lena was knocked out. But that was not what Alistair had planned. Alistair's phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Grace that read, "We just landed. Good luck. I love you." Alistair smiled to himself. "I love you too," he wrote back. Later that night in the locker room, the team's heavy, Pratt, approached Alistair. "How are they feeling?" Pratt asked, looking at Alistair's leg braces. "Fine," Alistair replied. They were not fine. Alistair couldn't remember when taking a step did not require a pharmacy to bear. "I need to know you're not going to do anything stupid," Pratt said. "The fuck are you talking about?" Alistair scoffed. "I'm just reminding you we all worked hard to be here. Some things are bigger than you." "I understand that better than anyone here," Alistair snapped. "That's what worries me," Pratt said as he walked away. Alistair pondered what he could have meant. "I'm doing this for you, for all of you. A trophy won't love you. You can make it try to, but it's just cold metal. Grace is right on that point. A lifetime of sacrifice amounts to a piece of metal. I'm doing this for you, Pratt. You and the rest of them. Forgive me. I hope you understand one day." Both national anthems were played. The crowd roared from the packed stands. The teams lined up parallel to greet each other and wish each other luck before they tried to knock each other's teeth out. Alistair stood across from Lena. She was strong, cut from diamond, but not massive as heavies had traditionally been. Both teams approached and shook hands. The metal from their exosuits clinked and clanked as they approached each other. Alistair shook Lena's hand in silence. They made cold, dead eyes at each other, and then they moved to their positions. The crowd in the stands roared in anticipation of the puck lift. Pratt lined up with Lena at the center of the arena. "You just need to survive, Pratt. That's all this is. Survival." The two heavies took readied stances. The referee ran to a post overlooking the stadium. Bzzz. The puck appeared at the center of the arena, lifted by a small, circular platform. It began. Lena jumped back as Pratt kicked the puck back to Alistair. Alistair scooped the sliding puck and grappled himself to the nearest wall. He slid past Rodriguez, the left winger, as he scraped on the wall with the Lithuanian enforcer. "Keep away, nothing fancy yet." A grappling hook connected to the wall in front of him. Alistair dropped to a lower part of the wall to avoid Lena barreling toward him. She attached to the wall above him. She's making her move this early? He was wrong. She shot toward Rodriguez. Pratt moved to intercept her, but he was too late. She grappled both of his shoulders as he fought with the Lithuanian enforcer. She tightened the lines and jumped 20 feet to the ground. Rodriguez's greaves were pulled from the wall, and he plummeted to the ground head first. The crowd roared in appreciation. When he landed, the buzzer sounded. A door opened in the wall, and medics carried him away on a stretcher. Lena now turned her attention to Pratt. "Time to get a little fancy. I won't be able to face her alone when the time comes." Alistair pushed toward the keeper, running directly toward him. The keeper readied himself for anything. Alistair shot a hook at the right wall and grappled toward it. The enforcer Rodriguez was fighting turned his attention to Alistair. "Good, I can use you." The enforcer grappled himself to a spot between Alistair and the keeper. A tried-and-true defensive tactic. It would prevent Alistair from kicking in the keeper and add another body if it came to a scrap. Alistair heard Pratt yell from the center. Lena had tied one of her grapples fully around his legs. She used the other grapple to attach to the ceiling of the arena. What is she doing? Alistair, still swinging toward the right wall, shot a grapple to the ceiling to intercept Lena. He heard a grapple behind him. "Sorry for this." Alistair unhooked from the ceiling and went into a free fall. He used the momentum to flip in midair, stomach facing the arena's floor. As he suspected, the enforcer was lifting himself to the ceiling behind him. He was not ready for Alistair's direction change and tried to grapple away. It was too late. Alistair fell on top of him as he tried to swing away. The enforcer's ceiling hook gave, and they both plummeted to the ground. Alistair shot a hook to the left wall, and their plummet became a two-person wrecking ball toward the wall. Alistair used the enforcer's body to break the force of the impact as they hit the wall. The enforcer fell unconscious immediately as the back of his head slammed against the arena wall. They slid down the wall 10 feet, Alistair still on top of the unconscious man. The crowd roared. The buzzer went off. The medics came. Alistair looked back to the center of the arena. Lena had fully grappled to the ceiling. The standard Greave-Ball arena was 40 feet tall. Pratt, legs still bound, dangled from her other grapple. Pratt grappled the ceiling with one arm to prevent a fall, and another at Lena, pulling himself closer to her. She's going to slam him. Alistair grappled to the ceiling and pulled himself up with as much speed as possible. He unhooked when he felt the most speed surround his body. Puck still in hand, he used his right arm to grapple a wall behind him. Instantaneously, he used his left arm to grapple a wall in the opposite direction. It felt like his body was being pulled apart. When the tension felt like it would break him, he released his right arm's hook, and his right arm became a catapult. He released the puck at the apex of the swing. His approach's speed, combined with the speed of the rotation of his throw, turned the puck into a weapon. The puck blurred toward Lena's head. She has to block it. Alistair was wrong. Lena, dangling in midair, scrapping with Pratt, unhooked herself from the ceiling and fell. Pratt, still dangling, tried to catch her, but she grappled him before he realized. Pratt would be pulled in half between her weight and his ceiling grapple if the cable went taut. He unhooked and tried to escape, but it was already over. Lena used her free hook to reattach to the ceiling. She became the center of a battering ram with Pratt as its hammer. Pratt couldn't grapple now. He was moving too fast. The force would rip off a limb. Lena swung Pratt into his own keeper. The force was immense. The two collided with the back of the goal like a bowling ball and pin. Bzzz, bzzz. The back of the goal opened, and the players were removed from the back like practice pucks. The crowd boomed with ferocity. Lena grappled the puck to herself and walked it into the goal. A higher pitch, bzzz. The round was over, and Alistair's team had lost 3 starting players to Lena. The mood in the locker room was dour. Their head coach, Jasmine Pedersen, tried her best to rally them, but they knew the match was over. There was no hope of winning with half of their starting lineup knocked out in the first round. Their strategy to kite Lena had failed. She was ready for it. It was impossible to kite her around the arena when she took the opportunity to win 2-on-1 fights in seconds. The new tactic was a full-on keeper assault, and hope that the confusion of the brawl will keep her from being so mobile. The second stringers were terrified. Alistair could smell it. Martin, the heavy Sylvester the winger, and Jane the keeper wouldn't last a few seconds against Lena. Strength in packed numbers was their best chance. Alistair knew Lena wasn't even tired yet. He wasn't, and he had exerted much more than she had. They would need more time to wear her down, time they could only secure through winning the round. When the coach left the locker room to let them prepare for the next round, Alistair stood at the head of the room. "I know she told us to assault the keeper, but we need to attack Lena." "Are you fucking kidding me?" Palmer, the right enforcer and one of the 3 remaining starters, gawked. "Al, you know that's insane," DiMarcurio, the starter left enforcer, chimed in. "It's our only hope, trust me," Alistair said. "You can't be on board with this, Jen?" Palmer asked the final starter. "Whatever Al wants. He's the only one who can keep up with her," Jen said. "Fuck me," DiMarcurio said. "It'll be fine. Keep her on the ground and I'll win the round before she can knock anyone out," Alistair said. "What you're asking us is suicide," Palmer said. "I'm asking you to trust me," Alistair said. And that was that. Alistair was many things to them, but above them all, he was a man of honor. His team followed him because he valued their safety over all else. He had sacrificed his own glory to preserve their well-being more times than they could count. Why should they distrust him now? He just hoped that they'd forgive him when it was all over. The second round began like the first. Lena dashed away from the puck and grappled to gang up on DiMarcurio. When she arrived on the wall next to them, 4 other grapples attached themselves to the wall near her. She smiled. Alistair saw both teams converge around Lena, save for himself and both teams' keepers. Alistair, puck in hand, slid on the left wall to the Lithuanian keeper. He heard screams from the opposite wall. It was a full-on brawl, the kind you saw in high school Greave-Ball. No order, no strategy, just bodies trying to destroy each other. The crowd roared louder than ever before. It was rare to see a heavy assault of this magnitude in a championship match. Alistair glided over the goal, the keeper shooting grapples at him to try to ground him. He dodged them, pushed off from the wall, and landed on the ground, sliding away from the keeper. Bzzz, bzzz. DiMarcurio and Sylvester had fallen. 2 enforcers from the brawl used the opportunity to pursue Alistair. Good. She'll still win, but it will soften her. The enforcers gave chase to Alistair as he skated around the arena. They couldn't catch him. Bzzz, bzzz. Palmer and Jen fell. He was running out of time. Only he and the keeper remained. He zipped to where the ceiling and the left wall met but did not attach. He used the height for speed. He shot down the wall, and his legs almost gave out as he slid down the bank where the wall met the floor. He was a bullet. Lena grappled in front of the keeper. She was exhausted from the brawl but still quick. Lena and the keeper readied themselves as Alistair shot towards them. He coiled his arm with the puck. The keeper raised his arms to block the shot, unveiling a small area of exposed goal between his legs. Alistair shot out a grapple to a near wall to make it seem like he was changing direction, but he did not tighten it. He retracted the grapple, and by the time the keeper had realized, Alistair slid through the space between his legs into the goal, puck in hand. A high-pitched bzzz. The round was over. Nobody spoke to him in the locker room. What he had done was unforgivable. They thought he had abandoned his team for personal glory. One last goal before their third-string players were crushed by Lena and 5 of the remaining Lithuanian starters. Coach Pedersen drew on a whiteboard, a creative play to score quickly and end the round before the third-stringers were beaten to a pulp. Alistair tuned it all out. It was time. Lena was exhausted from the brawl. She would be slow enough for Alistair to catch her. Coach Pedersen left, and the room was silent as the third-stringers focused on what they knew would be a slaughter. "You fucked us," Jane, the second-string keeper, said. Alistair looked up at her. She continued, "They won't say it. And everyone else who would say it, you nearly got them killed. What the fuck is wrong with you? You think it'll help your legacy by abandoning your— Some things are bigger than you, Alistair interrupted and walked away. He needed to focus on what was to come. The third round began. Lena grappled the American heavy's legs and slammed him into the ground. Bzzz! Alistair grappled her in the back as the medics left with the stretcher. He shot toward her as she tried to move away. She was too late. He held onto her as they slid together, and he slammed her into the left wall. She headbutted him, forcing him to back off. She planted her feet on his chest, but instead of pushing him away, she latched her greaves onto him. She twisted about his torso like a serpent and began choking him from his back. He grappled the wall in front of him, lifted them as high as he could manage, and fell backward, slamming her into the ground. The crowd was screaming at the top of their lungs. The puck was still in the middle of the arena untouched, as both teams focused on their respective matchups. They knew getting involved here was a death sentence for anyone who joined. Lena kicked Alistair off her and grappled him to pull herself back up. She relinquished the grapples as he turned around and re-grappled his neck. She slid around him and dragged him to the floor. She jumped on top of him and tightened the lines, blocking Alistair's airway. He began to fade out. There was no way out of this. He would lose again. He watched her arms pull the grapple gloves as he faded away. There. He grabbed the gloves and removed the grapples from her wrists. They fell to the ground. The crowd roared. He had disarmed her. She was human now. She punched him in the face, still above him. Alistair barely winced as he took the punch, catching his breath. She struck him again, but this time he caught her fist in his hand. She tried to escape, but Alistair pushed forward and snapped her wrist. She screamed. Alistair pulled on her arm, spinning her away from him. She was on her knees, her arm extended behind her. Alistair had full control of her arm. He rested his greave over her elbow. The crowd boomed with applause. They wanted it. All he had to do was push down hard enough with his broken leg, and he would break her arm clean off. Alistair looked to the crowds, tens of thousands of them beckoning him to end her. The king had returned. "Do it," Lena said, looking back at Alistair. "Yield," Alistair commanded. "I won't," she said, shaking her head. The crowd began chanting, "Break her! Break her! Break her! Do it! It's what they want! That's all we are to them!" Alistair looked to the crowds. Time slowed. They were ravenous, ugly creatures filling the air with their spittle as they begged him to destroy her. His son was there, somewhere. Was he chanting with them? Is this what Francis wanted too? Was the boy who cried when a bird abandoned her eggs calling for this too? The thought filled him with dread. "I yield," Alistair said. He dropped Lena's arm and walked off the arena. 2 months later, Alistair woke up next to Grace in their bedroom at his mother-in-law's cottage in Nantucket. Grace was still sleeping. He left the room quietly so as not to wake her. It was around 7 a.m., everyone was asleep, and the sun was rising. Alistair sat on the balcony drinking a coffee and watching the sunrise. To think I almost gave this up. And then he stopped thinking, consciously at least. He watched the sun peek over the ocean's horizon, and the only thoughts he had were about the sun. How big the sun was compared to everything around him. How the sun gave and expected nothing in return. A memory he had forced out resurfaced. Some things are bigger than you. Alistair finally understood what Pratt had tried to tell him in the locker room. This was the first he had thought of that day in weeks. Lena had found him in his locker room after the match. Her wrist was in a cast, and she looked worn. The Lithuanians had, of course, handily won after Alistair left the arena. "Thank you," Lena said. "Why do you play the way you do?" Alistair asked. "To feed my family. Outside of the U.S., it's hard to make a living playing this game. Have you ever played to feed those you love?" "No. By the time we had my son, I was making more money than I knew what to do with." "So why did you continue?" "I thought I owed the game something, and even worse, I thought it owed me something." "And did you get what you want from it, after almost giving it everything?" Alistair smiled and laughed. "Does anybody?" he asked. She smiled and nodded. "I am sorry for what I did to you last year. It's fine. I think I understand where you were coming from, Alistair said.
And you. Take care, Alistair,
Lena said as she left. Alistair announced his retirement the day after the championship. The day after that, he left for Nantucket with Grace and Francis. The sun sailed over the ocean horizon. It never stops giving. We owe this ball of gas everything, and it expects nothing from us. Maybe the sun taught us to love. He had never allowed himself thoughts like this before. He had been too focused on his career, legacy, and the game. But now, with his family asleep inside, and a son he never realized was so glorious, Alistair Farley found peace. The end. This has been a Right On Audio presentation of Greaves, a Right On Press feature presentation.
We hope you've enjoyed this Right On Audio feature presentation. If so, please like, share, and subscribe to receive notifications of all our latest content, and join us again soon for our next Right On Audio feature presentation.